Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the American Redemption podcast. My name is Steve.
And my name is Andrew, and welcome. We have started this podcast because we have noticed that ourselves and many others have become doomers in the last year. And I get it. We get it. I mean, we've got neocons running the show, and they suck. And the election was stolen, and nothing good is going our way with COVID. But we have come across some new ideas, and more importantly, new strategies, actionable strategies, and things we can all do that give us hope, that give us a white pill. And that's what we want to talk about.
Piggybacking off of what you just said, we want to bring energy and excitement to the conservative movement, which seems to have none. And more broadly, the podcast is just going to be about Americana and U.S. History, folklore, and cultural heritage, and just how rich American culture is, why it's worth redeeming, hence the title of the podcast, and how we can, take small actions in our day-to-day life to improve that. I mean, just today I was at work, and my company, has all these stupid mask rulings. I specifically bought a red bandana, which I didn't even wear, by the way. I wasn't called out by anybody about, making a big deal about it. And I put 2 American flags on my desk, just a small act of patriotism. It's
small acts of kindness and small acts of patriotism. That's what we're about.
That's how you take your country back, though.
It's a start, that's for sure. What we really got to do is establish a right-wing narrative. Why? Because we've never had one before. Think about it. The left has always had their way. They've been running the show for at least the last century. Things have been progressing, or regressing, rather, to the left, because they have a narrative, and it's something people latch onto emotionally. And we have only stood in opposition. We've had nothing for ourselves. We have had no vision. We need to put forward a vision for this country. And I think it's something that will resonate with all of us. It starts with the tenet of this new right-wing vision. An America where virtue is promoted over vice. Think about how powerful that would be. And that starts with all of us. In America where the family is understood to be the foundational and most important unit of our society. A common and unified culture. When's the last time we had that? Right now, half the country literally hates America and its history and everything it stands for. We want to live in communities that look like places where families live, not just outdoor shopping malls and endless parking lots. And we want to be able to go into our towns and shop at businesses owned by our neighbors, not just mega corporations. And what if you could safely send your kids downtown into the town square without worrying about theft or kidnapping or all these terrible things we seem to be dealing with so much? And what if back in the day, you could leave your door unlocked if you want to?
Your bike on a sidewalk.
Yeah. They need to reestablish neighborhood trust, which, though that is established by the other things we talked about, like the family values and the virtue and the common culture. We also don't want mass immigration or radical demographic transformation. How about instead some pro-family policies like in Poland and Hungary? That'd be pretty great. So how do we get there? I think the most important one is the promoting virtue over vice. It's a little like boomerish, a little cliche, but yeah, they say like America has to be good before it can be great again. And it's true. It's true.
No, it's exactly what I was talking about today. Like, you talk about small acts of kindness, small acts of patriotism. Again, it's you can't immediately start running a full sprint. you can't just wake up one day after being out of shape. And I mean, you look at our society. Our society is out of shape in a physical sense, but also in a spiritual sense as well. I mean, we look physically 400 pounds, and spiritually we're probably at a comparable place. And you're not just going to wake up one day and run a marathon. You're going to have to get up. You're going to have to walk on a treadmill. Then you're going to have to power walk on a treadmill. Then you're going to have to be able to jog and then sprint and then ultimately build yourself up to it. But it will take time, and it will take probably most of our lives. But I think it's something that's worth doing. And I mean, again, you got to have fun with it. You can't just be like, oh, it's so difficult to be a halfway decent person, you know, acting like a true leftist or whatever you want to call it, just being someone who whines about every little thing. Eventually, if you really want things to get better and morale to improve, you're going to have to do it.
Yes, great point. America's soul is 500 pounds and has diabetes.
That's a good analogy.
Yes, it is. And we're going to need to take one step at a time. First is the virtue. So let's talk about virtue a little bit. There's the pagan understanding and the Christian understanding, and they're both very similar. In many cases, you get the exact same outcome. With the pagan, we're talking about Aristotle. With Christianity, you're talking about many Christian philosophers, Catholic Church's stance. Thomas Aquinas was kind of the Christian fulfillment of Aristotle. He's good. He's very good. So in Aristotle's moral philosophy, virtue was focused on rationality. Virtue is this middle ground between two extremes. So, for example, when you felt the emotion fear, the middle ground response, the virtuous disposition, according to Aristotle, is courageousness, not foolishness or rashness, and not cowardice. It's somewhere in that middle. And that's, you know, courageousness, courage is also a Christian virtue. So we do find the same outcome many times. But in Christianity, virtue is all about love. And we can see why that makes sense, because there are times when being virtuous goes against your own self-interest, and that's not exactly rational. Christian virtue is basically summed up with, what would Jesus do? Because he was the perfect man, virtuous in every way, and truly loved everyone. So let's get more people acting like Jesus in their day-to-day lives. Why or how do we get there? What do you think, Steven?
No. I like your analogy about what would Jesus do, but I believe that was also co-opted by some Catholic socialists to produce a progressive agenda a little bit. So I would rephrase that and say, how much did Christ love the church, or what would Christ do for the church?
I was not aware of that. Interesting. We could do that, or we could just take it back as good Christian Americans.
Exactly. I'm okay with that too. I just didn't know if you knew that. I've heard that for the grapevine. You can.
No, I believe it.
You can ding me on it later, but I've.
What aren't the socialists taking? I mean, I believe it. Anyway, so imagine if we had more Chris Pratts and fewer Chris Browns out there in the culture. That would do a lot. Because the reason it takes us is because everyone has sort of a sphere of influence, and celebrities have a much larger sphere of influence. And right now, the celebrities are promoting vice. So it's on us, all right? In your own life, be virtuous, and you will see it spill over to your friends and family.
Yeah, I liked how you talked about that and said that celebrities do have a larger sphere of influence. I mean, we've unfortunately for our society given them that with social media. Like, okay, if they're going to post something scandalous or immoral or just downright depraved on social media, well, then that's exacerbated by the amount of people who are going to see that if like this person has 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, etc. followers. I mean, that's a lot of those people are impressionable kids, or they're following their favorite athlete or their favorite artist, and I mean they're seeing that and they're just engaging with that, and they haven't created their own like moral like compass yet. I mean they're forming it as they go, and they're seeing this stuff like, oh, okay, this is normalized in the world. Oh, this is how I should act in this kind of situation. And yeah, it's I
terrible.
think the internet has not helped our problems with this, but also when you see the flip side and you do see acts of kindness which are unfortunately less likely to go viral on the internet, I think that makes a big impact on people. When
True.
you do see a viral act of kindness, or someone with integrity doing something that would be outside the box, I think that's something that really gets people. So again, it's getting people's minds in a place where they're looking for the good. They're looking for someone who's virtuous, or they're looking for a virtuous act, and they latch on to it, and then that compounds.
Fortunately, yeah, you're so right that the acts of kindness do not go viral. Some would say that the internet and its consequences have been a disaster for the human race. Some would say this. Anyway, one last point about virtue and why it's so important, because we can talk all day long about the structural problems in our government, going back to the Civil War and the huge federal government that came as a result, or we can discuss political philosophy and if you would prefer to live in a monarchy or an aristocracy or a republic. And it's fun, but at the end of the day, what really matters is, do you have virtuous leaders? Because that's the only thing that it's really going to make an effective state. And we don't have that. We have corrupt pieces of crap running the show. And that's the reason. That's the reason everything is going down the toilet. If we had a virtuous populace from which to select virtuous leaders, things would be a lot better. You can believe me, a lot better.
Yeah, and I mean, just to go off of that, I mean, your society is what you're willing to tolerate and put up with. And I think a lot of our phrases and a lot of our lingo in society has preached tolerance with some really depraved behavior, and you kind of just get the and then like the shoulder shrug from like most people, even people that you would consider to be like pretty like upstanding citizens, people that you know and you value their opinion, even they're just like, that's just how things are, and it just snowballs out of control, and people wonder why things seem to keep going downhill. You have to be willing to make some confrontations with some things that frankly you're not okay with. I mean,
yeah, it's true. And that's, one of the reasons I've become more optimistic despite everything that's going on, is because I've noticed that people are becoming aware of this. We're ready to reimpose some standards and some morality on the culture. And it's good to see, because for so long it's not been that way. We've been sliding down the slippery slope, which is very real, not a logical fallacy, as the left might imply.
I think the worst is people that acknowledge the slippery slope and then still go down the slippery slope. Like that makes me like very like it's like they're like, oh, there's a banana peel in front of me. Okay, I see the banana peel, and they proceed to just walk right into the banana peel. It actually hurts me sometimes.
It drives me nuts. It really does. Yeah. Boomers, man.
Yeah. So why don't we segue into how we can promote virtue in this society? And you talked about this earlier. Talking about families in the family unit is definitely the most effective way to promote virtue in our society. And we need more fathers specifically to step up in the lives of their families and and actually lead from the front. I feel like a lot of people are leading from behind and kind of calling out shots, but we're not moving forward with having strong families.
It's really been a disaster. These divorce laws and the fatherless rates are so high, and it's just bad for kids in every way, especially boys. Not having a father is a disaster, but for girls too, it's really bad. We see this in their outcomes for their entire life. It's bad, and the left is responsible for the destruction of the family because they knew that it would destabilize the society and lead to ruin. So how do we get it back on track?
I will tell you how we get it back on track. So I'm going to take you through your traditional boomer argument, which I know you love, about how the traditional family creates middle-class citizens in the United States. And then we're going to tear this point down, and then we're going to reestablish it at a higher burden of proof, essentially telling you if you're doing some, you should do a little bit more. And if you haven't started yet, well then, get started. So first, the first thing to do to be pro-traditional family in America is to have your kids graduate high school. Right now, about 93 to 94% of kids graduate high school in this country. So right away, that stat doesn't alarm me. I would say that the education system is definitely from what I can tell, been dumbed down a little bit. And we're in a situation where that 93, 94% is essentially passed through without much of a thought. They're really not taught any skill. I mean, what did you know when you graduated high school? Did you know how to balance a checkbook? Did you know the basics of personal finance? I know my high school class, we had to take personal finance. They tried to teach us like Dave Ramsey and like how to like save to buy like a car, and like kids were like mocking it and jeering it and like sleeping through the class. And
Oh, that might have been the most valuable class they took. My high school had an optional personal finance class, so I think the kids who took it were relatively serious about it. You know, it wasn't mandatory. So I did come away with some good personal finance knowledge, but it's rare, especially for public high schools. And yeah, it's a disaster.
yeah, and so off of that, the second thing you can do is to wait till you're 21 to get married and not have any kids out of wedlock. This comes back to, again, the argument, how you become middle class in America and have kind of a textbook traditional family that they've talked about for the last, I guess, what would you say, half a century?
Sounds about right.
A little more, maybe like 60, 70 years, going back to like the 50s. I mean, you talk about the American dream. That's right about the 50s, post-World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third thing they tell you to do is to have a job. This could either be your typical 9-to-5 job or a job that earns you a paycheck, but basically having a means to provide for your family. Now, after you do all these things, the stats say that there's 74% chance that you will be in the middle class, albeit between like the 75th percentile and like the 25th percentile. So these are what we've been conditioned throughout, I guess we can call it the slippery slope, or the dumbing down of American culture and ideals, what the American family is. Oh, you should graduate from high school. You should wait a little bit to get married, not have kids before marriage, out of wedlock, and then having a job. This is the cut and dry boomer argument, but this is obviously the bare minimum you can do. So yeah, Andrew, why don't you tell us what we can do to improve ourselves?
Sure. Yeah. Those three boomer takes it's weak sauce. That's really it. That's all you have to do to be an upstanding citizen. That's basic stuff. All right. First thing you need to recognize to improve that basic framework is that divorce is off the table. Why? Because the marriage, once you have children, is for the kids. It's not just for the husband and wife. That's a immature view on marriage. It's very, very selfish to get divorced. It is just awful for the kids. So recognize that. Find yourself a spouse who is also seeking excellence and virtue, and commit to that person for life. There's no other way around it. That is crucial. You will also need to develop a real skill. Something niche is preferable because it increases your value, but any skill that will help you move up in life.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, just simply having a job is not enough. Once you have a family to provide for, you're gonna need something more.
Yeah, I mean it's great in our high inflation economy right now that you can make like $17-18 flipping burgers at McDonald's, but is that going to maintain a family? Absolutely not. Is that going to be a transferable skill when we go back to the bartering system if the dollar collapses? I mean, you really need to have something that is tangible. I mean, whether it be plumbing, or doing car repair, or doing I don't know, give me another example.
Well, they're not just trades even. You could be a teacher or something like that, but also, we're not talking just about skills for employment. Skills that you can use around the home to make improvements for yourself. Like learn how to change your own oil and how to do some basic plumbing. It's just as valuable. Okay, and then our third point is you need a means to support a family, which we touched on there with having some skills. Really, what we're getting at with this one is financial independence. Why? Because it gives you both security and freedom. It makes you uncancelable. You already no cancel culture coming after you, and it gives you freedom so that you can spend more time with your family. First, you need to get out of debt and establish an emergency fund, and then you can work to build up a large enough nest egg to have financial freedom, which is when you theoretically do not need to work anymore. It's something we should all be striving for.
Oh, and now, I mean, all the points go hand in hand with each other.
True.
What? Yeah, I mean, means to support a family and having financial independence, that goes right in with having a skill. Because I mean, if you have skills where you don't need to constantly be hiring another person to do that job for you, you just go ahead and do it. That's saving you money.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you talked about the specific just moral argument for not getting divorced, but there's a very big financial thing there as well. True. People who get divorced are much more likely to go under financially. Not that that's the pinnacle of the goal for what you're going for there, but it is a underlying factor.
Right. It is a nice side benefit of not getting divorced.
And yeah, I think all of these things equal, again, how you can not only build your own narrative, but decentralize yourself from a lot of the powers that be. And I think it's a good thing moving forward for traditional families to, again, be self-sufficient and kind of march to the beat of their own drum, while maintaining their, integrity as a strong family unit.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah, so we've talked about virtue and why we need that and why we need strong families. Let's talk about what we can all be doing right now, today. Seeking excellence, yes, and getting big. That's part of it. We need to be constantly improving ourselves. And I believe there are 3 components you should focus on: your mind, your body, and your spirit. So for your mind, you need to be reading and learning. Never stop learning and never stop reading. Steven, what are you reading right now?
I am currently reading the Federalist Papers. And let me tell you, James Madison was a genius. He foresaw everything that we're going through right now. He explained why we need a republic as our form of government, because having a democracy would
is cringe.
Yeah, it would upset the apple cart, constantly having a ton of local votes on a ton of local matters would take forever. So you have to have a government that's malleable enough to, which is a large republic, a government that's malleable enough to deal with some turnover and some change, but also foundational enough that it couldn't be easily corrupted.
Yeah. Just a side note, we have way more democracy today than the founding fathers ever wanted. When the Constitution was established, only male property owners could vote. And I'm just going to say, if that's how it was today still, we'd be in better shape. That's all I'm going to say. A lot better shape. But yeah, it's good to read nonfiction, but don't forget about fiction. You can learn a lot from fiction because great literature, great stories, they help you to understand the world, and they have very deep meanings. So don't forget about fiction. You also need to be working on your physical well-being, fitness, overall fitness, eating correctly, and I would throw in self-defense as well. Spiritually, you need to be attending religious functions, church every Sunday or mass, pray regularly, and find yourself a community of other Christians. That is going to tie it all together. You're going to become lost if you don't have that community. So go out there, find some community. They're literally everywhere, but if for some reason you can't find one, then start one. Go to the gym if you're not already. And if you are, go more and work out harder and eat better.
Yeah, you're doing a bit of training yourself.
That's right. Just started learning jiu-jitsu, which is probably the most practical martial art for self-defense, because you don't even need to punch someone, which, that can get you in legal trouble if you've broken someone's nose or knocked their teeth out. You can put them in a chokehold. If you really need to, you can break their arm. Jiu-jitsu is kind of about establishing control and then negotiating. Put yourself in the best situation. Most fights end on the ground. So jiu-jitsu is sort of like, it looks like wrestling with chokeholds and submissions, joint locks and such. So it's very, very practical. You don't learn to do these silly fancy kicks that you're never actually going to use in a fight. You learn on day one how to flip someone over on their back if they're punching you, and then break their arm if need be. Very practical. I recommend it. Okay, so we want to challenge you all to take one of those 3 pillars of excellence and start working on one that you were not currently. So join a gym or join a club, like boxing club or a jiu-jitsu club.
Volunteer. at an event that you're excited or passionate about. I mean, that's a big thing. Again, if you have a friend or a neighbor that needs help, or even if you're not, even if you're like younger, volunteer to coach a kid's soccer team, or go ahead and volunteer at your local Bible study, or try to assist your youth minister at your church. I mean, there's no bounds to the amount of things that you can get involved in.
Go in there and give the youth some Chad energy, or your community some Chad energy. Show them what it's like to be a real conservative, and inspire them. Be a leader.
Yeah, I mean, we do have time for these things. People who say they don't have time for these things, I think they're selling themselves the wrong story.
So true. There's always time.
Again, yeah, you are what you put your time into. And yeah, I mean, get to know someone in your neighborhood, and develop a strong relationship with them, or just go out in the world and do a random act of kindness for someone. You could never know how you meet someone that way, by just being kind and not being hostile towards them. I feel like in the last year, like, the world has gotten so hostile to people. I mean, you talk about walking outside. Oh, someone's going to yell at you and tell you to put a mask on. Someone's going to berate you about this, berate you about that, because everyone just has all this pent up
energy, bad energy.
Yeah, and again, you use it for good. Use it to take it out. Throw it out into the world as good energy. Don't throw it out in the world as bad energy, which seems to be the case a lot of the time.
Yeah, so that's our challenge for the week. Go out there and do an act of kindness. Find some community and improve yourself. Yeah. I guess that's all. Want to close this out, Steve?
Yeah, no. Again, be nice to people. Take care of your mind, body, and spirit. Use virtue and not vice. Again, just treat people better and do better, and then you'll wake up one day and your country will be better, and it'll be awesome, and everyone will love you.
True. This is it's inevitable. All right. So yeah. Thank you for listening if you made it this far, and we would really appreciate some feedback either on the YouTube video or on the podcast apps. And we would really appreciate your subscription. This is our first ever podcast, and we're going to hope to do this more often and get better each time. Come back with some good ideas and some more action we can all take. Thank you for listening.